Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Saturday morning. Welcome to the Leak Detection Workshop hosted by Rancho, California Water District. We are so glad that you could all attend today for this virtual meeting. We do look forward in the future to having in-person meetings back, and as soon as we can do that, we would love to welcome you all back to Rancho, California Water District to join us in some in-person events. But for today, I am Kimmy Wall, the Public Information Officer for Rancho Water, and also your moderator for today's meeting. I would also like to introduce some other panelists that we have on the line. Kyle Jeffries, who is our Conservation and Water Budget Analyst for our Water Use Efficiencies team. And Nikki Reedy, also a panelist. She is our Water Efficiency Specialist for the Water Use Efficiencies team here at Rancho Water. And of course, we have the star of the show, Gabriel Michael. He is the CEO at Blue Watchdog Conservation, Inc. So we welcome today Gabriel. Again, he's the CEO. Gabriel started his career as an irrigation technician, designing, constructing, repairing, and maintaining sophisticated irrigation systems. His passion for environmental studies drove him to focus on water use efficiency. After obtaining multiple nationally recognized certifications, Gabriel became an irrigation auditor, helping homeowners and commercial property owners identify ways they could save water. Gabriel has conducted over 3,000 residential irrigation audits and over 200 commercial, industrial, and institutional water use evaluations. And he was telling us just this morning he was at a few different agencies right here in our region giving this same presentation. So we're very lucky to have him on our schedule for today. We're also lucky because Gabriel is based right here in Southern California, right out of Cardiff. So while other speakers you might find from other places in the nation, he is right here in Southern California, so he can come right to your house for an actual leak detection in person. And you can find his website at bluewatchdog.net. So a few housekeeping things to go over before we get started today. I have a few technical notes for our attendees so we can be sure that everyone can ask questions or make a comment as needed. During the presentation, please keep your microphone on mute. If you require technical assistance, please use the chat function to speak with the host of the webinar. If you have a question for the presenter, use the Q&A function right here at the bottom of your screen to submit your question, or the raise your hand function to let the panel know that you would like to ask a question. If you're calling into this meeting from a phone, please press star 9 to raise your hand. Once the presentation is complete, questions will be taken as time allows. So again, at the end of the agenda, any questions and comments will be taken. As the moderator, I'll call your name as it appears on the screen or the last digits of your phone number, and you'll be asked to unmute so you can ask your question. We do look forward to this being an interactive meeting, so please don't be shy. If you have questions that come up, just enter them right there in the Q&A section. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this webinar over to Gabriel. Gabriel, take it away.
Determine that you have a leak. And then once you determine that you have some sort of leak, we're going to go through the isolation methods. So an isolation method will help you narrow down where on your property this leak is occurring. Once we narrow down where it is, we'll go through how you can visually inspect both the indoors and the outdoors to see if you can actually find the leak and possibly repair it. Lastly, we will talk about improving water efficiency. And then, like Kimmy said, we will take questions and answers at the end. So starting with a drought update, a really cool resource for drought updates is this drought monitor. You can see the website down below. It's droughtmonitor.unl.edu. And this is something that's updated fairly recent or fairly regularly. I believe it's about every week or so, but this is going back in time to about 2014 when we were in a very severe drought here in Southern California, and as you can see in this state. So what this is this is just showing the intensity and what drought conditions the state was in 2014. You can see as we go to 2015, doesn't get any better. It actually got worse. 2016, we sort of turned a corner. 2017, looking better. Remember, we never really are out of a drought. There's always these drought conditions and reasons to conserve water. As we get to 2019, looking better. The beginning of last water year, it started to get much worse. And then looking at this from this week, from Thursday, this is the current drought map for the state. So you can see there's a lot of extreme drought. There's a lot of severe drought. Where we are, we're in a moderate drought down here in Riverside County. But still looking at where our water resources come from, in a lot of cases, it's in areas where there is extreme and severe droughts. So we like to preface the class with that to kind of show the importance of conserving water. Now we'll jump into the actual leak detection process. So leak detection process could start one of two ways. One is the old school method, which is looking at your water meters. So your water meter can generally be found in one of these valve boxes. They're plastic. You can open them up. You can see that this is what they will generally look up. They'll be near the curb or the sidewalk. A good tool to have when you're opening this box is like a screwdriver. So you can actually put it into this hole here and pry the lid off. Once you get inside there, you will see the register for your meter looks just like this. This is where you can read your meter, and you can even line up the meter reading here. This is like, the odometer reading on an old car style. This meter reading will line up with what your last meter reading was. So the last meter reading is taken directly from these 4 digits that you see with the white backgrounds. So maybe your last bill was 9490 and it was a couple of days ago, and now it's gone up 3 units since the last bill. A couple of things to look for on this meter, the front of the face of it, is what we have a large sweep hand, and then we also have this little blue dial, which is a flow indicator. So this meter gives us the ability to see in real time if water is passing through the meter. And the way we look for this is generally, hey, is there anything moving on the front of this? The two things we're pointed to our attention is the sweep hand and this dial. So the sweep hand, if this is moving, if you ever see this sweep hand moving, that means that you have a high amount of flow going through the meter. So you can expect something like a faucet or a shower, something that's consuming a lot of water is running to get this large hand to move. Now, if you have a smaller amount of flow, this little dial here, which is your flow indicator, will be spinning, and you can determine that, yes, there's water moving through the meter, but it's a smaller amount. Where's my video? I'm going to click this video. So what you can see here is this video is taken at a residential property. And this is where you can see that the little dial here, the flow indicator, is spinning. Now, each time this spins around once, it actually clicks up one little tick here, which is a 0.01 value. So you can even quantify this with a stopwatch. But this is just enough of an indication to say, hey, I have everything off in the house. There's no, nothing's running. I went around visually looked. There's nothing dripping, no sinks, not fully turned off. And if you see this type of movement, that's an indication that there is water moving through the meter. And just to play it again so you can kind of get used to how slow this can be. So it's not a quick glance down. You have to kind of stare at this to make sure you're looking for this movement. Now this was quantified to be about 7 gallons an hour. So it's significant in how much water is being lost. But if you look at it in comparison to a flow rate of, like a faucet or a shower or something, it's a really, really small amount of flow. So one thing you could do is read your meter to determine how much water is being used. Like I said, this is something where, again, you have this odometer built into the face of it. You can look at the 2 different meter readings. This is similar to, again, what the water district will be doing for, determining how much water you use, taking a meter reading at maybe the beginning of the month, which is 1356, and then maybe at the end of the month to say 1397. And say this is how much was used in a billing cycle. You can also do this test to determine if you have a leak that isn't constant. So what we saw in that video was that dial spinning very, very slowly. And when that dial's spinning very, very slowly, that's telling me, hey, there's this constant amount of flow going through the meter. Now, you might have something like a toilet that doesn't leak constantly. It's an intermittent leak, which means it goes on and off unintentionally. And to catch something like that, you want to actually do a longer test. So you want to take a beginning reading and an ending reading about 2 hours or longer apart. So this would be looking at the meter, going to the store, running errands, coming back, and then making sure that meter reading is the same. That tells you, hey, over the course of 2 hours or so, the meter didn't change at all. So this is something where you can, again, get your beginning reading, which you see here, 1356, and then go, or 1356, and then go and get a meter reading 2 hours later. Now, the cool thing is again, this is old school way of doing it. The better way to actually do this is through the MyWater Tracker. So MyWater Tracker is something offered by Rancho, California Water District that allows you to log in and look at your usage. This has the resolution of on the hourly basis. So you can actually look at your consumption every hour. And this helps you to identify if there are any leaks on your property. So this is a screenshot of when you go to, pay your bill. There's a little MyWater Tracker tab. You can click on that and see this kind of data. So this is showing you at the daily use. So you could see here is the daily use on this property, and then potentially, a leak starts when you see something like this happen on that daily usage. What's better to look at is the hourly usage. What you can see here is that every hour of every day, there's water usage. When you go to bed, when you're not at home, there shouldn't be any consumption. So what you're looking at here is where there's usage, and then it stops, and then it starts, and then it stops. And that sort of thing is more consistent with normal water usage. But when you see, water being used at just a steady rate through the night and through the day, that's a good indication that you have a leak, and that you need to go and, find out where that leak is. So you can use the old school method, much easier to use the MyWater Tracker, new technology method. But either way, once you figure out that, hey, I do have a leak, now it's time to isolate that leak down to where we can locate it, possibly, and maybe repair it, or call a professional to repair it and keep it isolated till it's repaired. So a little bit about the anatomy of your system. We have, looking at our water meter, like I said, it is generally on the street near the sidewalk. And then what you have is a service line that runs up to your house and what we call a point of connection. So the first step is to identify where your point of connection is to your house. So nice day today to go out after this class and identify some of the things we're talking about. Maybe it's not something you need right now to shut off the water, but it's good to know in the case of an emergency, or again, if you get some sort of alert from the my leak detector to say that there is a leak and you want to, or MyWater Tracker to say there's a leak and you want to go and, not find out where all this stuff is, but already know where these devices are. So this is a general setup for what the water would look like coming into a typical home. Now, this is maybe not what the configuration will look like at every house, but generally it's about the same how it's plumbed. So we have the water coming from the house. So this is, again, our service line from the meter. It's going up and into the house. And then we have a T here that goes out into the irrigation. Now, in some cases, you won't have this looking device on your property. You will have just a straight pipe that goes out to valves that looks similar to this. So your irrigation valves will be above ground and they will be the backflow prevention. So this little vacuum breaker is common in probably about half of residential properties. So you may have this, you may not. So what you're generally looking for is somewhere where you see a water pipe coming up into your house and some sort of lever to turn on and off that water. Now, there are different types of valves. So we have a gate valve, and a gate valve, how you operate this is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So when you turn it clockwise and you want to turn it real tight to close it, the water is completely off. It's important that when you are operating a gate valve, you turn it nice and tight because it's literally putting down a gate in front of the water. So if you don't tightly close it, there might be just enough of a space underneath the gate or an opening so that the pressurized water can continue through and you can't actually isolate that pipe the way you want to. So gate valves are pretty popular. Also very, very popular are ball valves. Now, a ball valve is easier to operate because it has pretty much a starting position and an ending position. So what we see it in now is parallel to the pipe. And when this lever is parallel to the pipe, the water is open and it is flowing. And when you give it a quarter turn, so that is perpendicular to the pipe, the pipe will be closed. So it's it's much easier to operate and to determine, yes, I've turned it on, I've turned it off, versus a gate valve. Just looking at it, you won't know if it's on or off. You'll have to actually go and see, is it tight to the right or tight to the left, or is it in the middle, or how is it? But a ball valve is much easier to look at and say, okay, that valve is off or that valve is on. So parallel is on and perpendicular is off. So step one in our isolation process is to start shutting off valves to isolate certain parts of our main line. The first thing that is recommended to isolate is your service line. So that's going to be between the meter and the house. And the way we do this is we shut off our house valve and we shut off our house valve and our irrigation valve. Here's another setup that is also common. You might have a master shutoff that shuts off the house, and then your T for the irrigation might be past this valve. So it shuts off everything downstream. So there's lots of different ways this can all be put together. It can get very custom over the years as things are replaced and things need to move around. But generally, this will be your setup. You'll have a ball valve. You can see this one is perpendicular, so it is off. Again, this one's perpendicular, so it's off. And then we have a different style of ball valve where you have kind of two little wings here. This is also perpendicular to the pipe, so this turns the water off. Now, once we have the house off and the irrigation off, we go back to the meter, and in real time, you can look and see, hey, did the leak stop or is it continuing to go? So this is where, if you use MyWater Tracker to determine you have a leak, this is where having knowledge about looking at your meter comes in handy during the isolation process, because now you can go out to that meter and you can see in real time, did I stop the leak or is it continuing? Now, if you stop the leak, that means something's happening in your service line, something between the meter and the house. This is where you want to now walk back and forth. Try your best. It's not always going to be in a straight line, but a lot of times you can see, hey, it's a straight shot from the meter to the house or where my point of connection is. Walk back and forth, see if there's an area that's giving you, a little bit of, there's more saturation in the landscape, or there's puddling water. That's an area where you probably have something that is broken. If you have something in the service line, this could be, under a driveway. It's probably going to be where you want to contact a licensed plumber to determine exactly where it is. That's going to have more sophisticated equipment. It's going to be a lot faster than, trying to trench out the entire main line to look at it. But now we've determined that it is in the service line if the meter is still running. If the meter stops when you turn off the house and the irrigation, that means the leak is somewhere either in the house or in the irrigation. So the next step is going to be isolating those two parts of the property. So what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to have the water on to, and in this method, we're going to turn the water back on in the house, and we're going to leave the water off in the irrigation. So the way this works now is we have the service line was cleared in our last step, and we're turning the water back on in the house and leaving the irrigation off. If the leak starts up, that means there's something happening inside the house. If we still have no movement on the meter, we're going to assume it's outside, but we can switch the role. We can shut off the house and turn on the irrigation if that's possible, and see, okay, yeah, for 100%, we've got movement only on the outdoors. So this is the important step, because a lot of times it's not going to be in the service line. It's going to be indoors or outdoors on one of these main lines. So you want to turn on and off the house and the irrigation and determine, okay, does the leak move when the house is on and the irrigation's off, or vice versa? So if we do have movement with the house on, then we're going inside to inspect. If we do have movement on our outdoor main line, then we're going outside to inspect. So let's pretend that we do have a leak on our outdoor main line. We're going to start an outdoor visual inspection. So for an outdoor visual inspection, you want to look through all your devices. Irrigation valves, hose bibs, and pool autofills are going to be the most likely devices on your outdoor main line that will malfunction. Now, it's also important that if you've determined, hey, it's outside, that you do a nice visual inspection of the whole property to look for any standing water in areas that maybe are growing a lot of weeds and there's no irrigation there. That sort of thing will point to something happening underground. Now we look at an irrigation valve. This is something where this is going to be probably one of the more common culprits for an outdoor leak, just because everything on the outdoors is going to be plumbed in, hard PVC metal, and it's pretty, the structure of it is pretty sound. But then when you get to a valve, the internal parts of this they're always moving. So moving parts will break faster. They're made of now a combination of metals and rubbers. So all these materials inside are more fragile than the harder bodies that they're built into. So this is where you see a lot of malfunctions in the outdoors in these valves. Now, I said earlier, you might not have a backflow prevention device at your point of connection. It's going to be really common, again, that you just have a T at your point of connection. It goes to the outdoors, but all your valves look like this. This is a very common style of valve called an ASV valve or anti-siphon valve. These come out of the ground and then go back in the ground. This is your backflow prevention for the outdoors to keep water from being siphoned back into the domestic feed or to the city feed. What we're looking for on this meter is part of it's self-explanatory. So you're looking at the meter, giving it a nice inspection. If it's under bushes and trees, maybe a flashlight is helpful, but you're looking to see if you have any water shooting out of it. And it basically, if you've got something like a seal that has gone bad, you'll see just a pen stream of water coming out of it. And that could be all it is. That's the leak. It's something that's just over time has broken, has gotten cracked or whatever, and now you're losing water directly on the outside of this valve. That's an easy one to determine just by looking at it. Something else to check when you're looking at your valves is you want to make sure everything is tight on the top of it. So what you see on the top here, this is called a solenoid, and this right here is your bleed screw. If either one of these two devices is loose, what will happen is there's a diaphragm inside this valve that won't shut properly sometimes, if either one of those two devices is too loose. So we want to make sure that they're both tight. Just give it a turn to the right slowly. Just hand tight, no tools. You don't need to over tighten anything. It's just going to be hand tight, and then you should be able to confirm that, hey, everything's closed off. There's nothing leaking here. And then the last thing would be if there's something leaking really slowly, rather than, hard to see at the bottom here, but there's usually the standpipes, either like a gray or a white pipe. If that's bright green, that's from algae buildup, and that's from algae growing from the constant water and everything being there from usually something rather small leaking out of the bottom of the valve. And that would be a seal on the bottom threads here. But all that stuff, again, is a visual inspection and kind of just making sure everything's tight. Then we can move on to the next step, because that valve isn't losing any water externally, but it can fail internally and let water through. So this valve's job is to turn on and off, right? You program your controller and you say, hey, I need my lawn to run however many minutes, and it turns on that valve. It opens that diaphragm and closes that diaphragm however many minutes you program it to. Or maybe even better, you have a smart controller that does the automatic adjustments. Either way, if this valve's diaphragm isn't closing properly, that water is just going to go downstream out to the sprinklers. So one thing that you want to check is actually at the sprinkler heads themselves. Because if you look at the sprinkler heads, you can sometimes find if there's a broken valve and it's letting water downstream. To the heads that are lowest on that zone, they're just dribbling out a little bit of water. Now, to actually accomplish this, it's important that we know where the sprinklers are. And on properties, you can have maybe 100 different sprinklers. So it's probably worth turning on zone by zone, looking at where all the sprinklers are, maybe marking them with something or taking a picture, turning the zone off, and then walking up to those locations. If this is something where you've had a leak and it's been going on for a while, that area is going to be completely, flooded out, because this isn't something broken underground. This is leaking right on the surface. So it's delivering the water right to the surface. It should be very apparent. You want to clear away any vegetation. If it's in a lawn, you might have to clear away the grass and actually look at the heads and see, do you see any water coming out of the head? Now, if you do find a leaking sprinkler, it looks like this. If you ever find a sprinkler that's leaking like this, you want to find out which valve that's on, because then you can say, hey, that valve's not working, and it's best to just replace it at that point, given the cost effectiveness of repairing and replacing an ASV valve. I would say just chop it out, put a new one in. If you're not comfortable replacing a valve, call a licensed irrigation technician, have them replace your valve. But this is something you can do. You can, if you ever see a sprinkler leaking like this, it's not pointing to something being broken directly here. It's pointing to wherever the valve is feeding water to this sprinkler, that has malfunctioned and that needs to be taken care of. Another really common thing that will happen on the outdoor main lines is the pool autofills. Now, the pool autofills will generally, they have a very low life expectancy when they're plumbed off of outdoor main lines, just because a lot of them, the way they operate is much like the system in the back of a toilet. They work better at lower pressures, but when you put them on unregulated outdoor mains, it's common across every district that I work in. I see these pool autofills failing. And one thing you could do to just from a preventative maintenance standpoint is put a pressure regulator on the pool, or even put an ASV valve, which can stand up to higher outdoor pressures for the pool. So what we're looking for is we're inspecting the autofill to ensure it's not continuously running. One thing that's really will be useful here is getting your ear as close as possible to that little skimmer box and listening. Maybe even lifting up on the float to see if it's turning it off and turning it on. Sometimes you may need to adjust the height of the autofill float. So if that autofill float is set too high and you have an overflow on the pool, you will just continuously be running water into the pool and out that overflow pipe into either the storm drain or even possibly the sewer, so you don't even see it. And it's just going to be a continuous thing. You're just bringing potable water in and putting it out into the sewer or the storm drain. So you want to check the autofill float, and you just look at the general height of your pool to determine if the autofill float is too high or not. If the height of the pool is right at your overflow pipe, that's not where it's supposed to be. It should be about 1/4 of an inch or more below that overflow pipe. If you have a manual fill pool, you want to check. This is similar to your irrigation valves, but these are brass. You want to confirm that there's no water moving through this. You want to ensure that this also is very tight. I've seen residential properties that have leaks, and all it is that their manual pool fill, the valve just wasn't closed all the way. They turned it close enough, but again, if you don't have that gate valve, you don't have that gate all the way in front of that stream of water, what's going to happen is a little bit of water gets underneath, and then it's just going to slowly, nonstop, 24/7 leak through that valve and into the pool. Another thing that might be happening for your pool is it might be running, but it's running because it is trying to resupply water into a pool because the pool actually has something leaking in it. Either it's the pipes that lead from the pool to the pump to the filter and back in that whole system, or it's in the liner. So one way you can determine if your pool has a leak is you could do what we call a bucket test. Bucket test is something to just determine how much water is being lost out of the pool every day. So the first step in a bucket test is to turn off the feed to the pool. So you're going to turn off your autofill, manual fill, however water is getting into that pool, you're going to shut that off and leave it off for a couple of days, maybe even 3 days. You're going to put a bucket on the first step, and then you're going to fill that bucket with water to the same height as the pool. You're going to mark the level of water with the bucket, and you're going to wait 2 or 3 days. Now, what happens over the next 2 or 3 days is evaporation is going to start to lower the level of the pool and the bucket. Now, they should gradually be dropping at the same whatever evaporative rate we have. Now, if you come out, the next day or 2 days later, and the pool has dropped way down, but the bucket is still sitting, maybe 1/4 of an inch lower, that's a good indication that you need to call a pool technician and say, hey, something in the system is leaking. There's much more sophisticated equipment needed to determine exactly where in a liner and all of that a pool system's leaking. But this can at least help you identify, hey, this is where I'm losing water. And you can isolate it by leaving the pool off and the pump off and the filter off and getting a technician out as soon as possible, rather than just filling into the pool, which might be, leaking in the liner on the side of your house and creating more supplemental damage than it's worth to keep pumping water in there. So if you see a pool leak, or if you determine that you have a pool leak by doing this bucket test, call a technician and say, hey, I think I have an issue and I'd like you to come out and check it out, confirm it, have a professional confirm it, and do all the repair work. Other things on outdoor visual inspections, it's recommended that identified and unidentified outdoor leaks remain isolated. So if you do realize, hey, I've got a leak outside, and you find it, leave the outside water off until you can repair it yourself or have someone come out and do the repairs. And obviously, if you find that you have an outdoor leak and you can't find it, even better to just leave it off and wait for someone to come out. Leak detection companies are going to have much more sophisticated equipment. If you're not finding a leak, there's a good chance that it's going to be, in a main line. And if it's in a main line, you need more sophisticated equipment to actually go through and find those types of breaks. Also really important, if you have an outdoor leak and you don't isolate it and it's only maybe 8 or 9 gallons an hour right now, whatever is happening underground isn't going to get better. It can only get worse. If it's something like a welding on a pipe has gone bad, or a joint is bad, or there's a hairline fracture, that could just only rupture or get worse with time. So it might only be 6 gallons an hour or whatever now, but if you can isolate it, get a professional to repair it later, that's great. That's better than just leaving that outdoor main line on and then having this catastrophic failure in the middle of the night. Because again, when we go to sleep and demand goes down, pressures tend to go up. So that's going to do even more damage on whatever this situation is. It's always recommended that you hire a licensed contractor. So parts, materials, workmanship, all that is, insured and guaranteed, especially if you're working on a main line and something technical that, does have, the ability to fail a lot easier. So licensed contractors, have it isolated until you get them out there. If you do feel comfortable repairing something like a valve, sprinklers, or whatever the case may be, if you feel comfortable repairing something, that's fine. Just leave it isolated until it can be repaired. So that was the outdoor inspection. Let's talk about if we were to isolate our leak and it was determined to be inside, how we do an indoor visual inspection. So the same way that we isolated our outdoor leak, an indoor leak, by saying, okay, we're shutting off the indoors, we're shutting off the outdoors. Okay, which way is it going? Cool, it's inside. We want to do the same thing for our hot and cold water. So the way we can do this is we can shut off the hot water heater or the hot water supply. What happens is you go inside, you say, okay, the leak is inside. You can then shut off your hot water heater, go back to the meter. If the meter stops, you can say, okay, it's a hot water leak. If the leak continues, that means it's on the cold feed. So this is going to change just a little bit of your search process, but it does help you to understand, hey, am I losing water, or am I losing water and power? Because if it's a hot water leak, then you're also paying for the gas, or whatever method you're using, whatever energy you're using to heat that water. Now, if it's a hot water leak, one thing that's in your benefit here for the indoor inspection is the you can go around actually feeling parts of the floors and the walls. If hey, the hot water needs to go to the bathroom, it needs to go to the kitchen. If you know how the plumbing inside your house is already in the walls, that's great. One thing that's really cool here, if you do have a hot water leak, is if anyone's a baker or a cooker, they have those little point and shoot laser thermometer things. You put a laser on something, it tells you the temperature of it. Those are really cool for actually scanning around the property and saying, okay, hey, whoa, the floor here is 90 degrees. That's not right. So those are really cool. It's actually something that I have when I go inside houses and look for hot water leaks. I use the little point and shoot thermometers. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for areas that are, local warm areas that are hotter than the surrounding areas. And then we're also looking for any signs of damage, so including warped floors and that sort of thing. Now for cold water, it's going to be pretty much the same as far as going through on a visual inspection. You're looking in corners, you're looking in walls, you're looking for damp areas and saying, okay, does anything look like it is just, wet? We're looking for cracks in the foundation, looking for doors that won't close properly. So when you do have wood absorbing moisture, it tends to warp. And so if you ever have a door that won't shut completely and you're trying to track down a leak somewhere, there's a good indication it's in that wall. Now, devices is something that is going to be more often the leak culprit for the indoors. So when we look at devices, we're looking at toilets, sinks, bathtubs, showers, ice makers, water filtration systems. Remember, on any inspection, it's always great to just be hyper vigilant on noise of running water. So if you're doing outdoors or indoors, you just try to be as quiet as possible, turn off the TV and everything, walk around the house very quietly, and listen as closely as possible to everything that you go and look at. So when we go in to look at a toilet, we want to be really quiet. Now these things can leak very, very quietly, so it's best to actually get up close and take off the back and all that. But a little bit about a toilet and the anatomy of these things is that we have an overflow tube, which is A. We have this lift chain B, which is lifted up by the flush handle D. When you push down on the handle, it lifts up the chain and it lifts up this flapper, which is C. The flapper is going to be probably one of the most common indoor leaks. As far as devices, it's toilets, and then within the toilet, it's the flapper. You can also have a valve that just continuously runs, but the flapper is something that really commonly you will see malfunction on toilets. Now, the difference in the leaks here is that if you have a continuous leak, you're looking for a valve stuck on. You're not, I mean, you could still have a valve, you can still have a flapper issue, but you're listening to see if this valve right here is still running. You want to open the cover to ensure the water's not flowing. So like I said, you want to get as close to it in your visual inspection. You want to open up the back of this, get as close to that as possible. You should be able to see or hear once you actually have the back open. You want to make sure that the water level is about 1/2 inch below the top of this pipe. If the water level is sitting right at the top of the pipe, even if you can't hear it, that's a good indication that the valve is still running. One thing you can do to just double check is you can actually take your palm and put it over the top of that overflow pipe. And if the water starts to rise up over your hand, that means that valve is really, really slowly still putting water in the back of that tank. So that's a valve issue. In that case, just like we talked about before, isolating, leaving off till it can be repaired, that's when you would shut off the toilet. And then to have double confirmation, you can go back out to the meter once you turn that toilet off and say, hey, the meter stopped. That was the issue. Or maybe the meter didn't stop and you have 2 leaks, which is a possibility. But this is something where now we can isolate the leak that we did find. We can go out and get the materials to repair, replace this. Now, a lot of this stuff can be, you can get directly from the manufacturer. They make this whole setup right here, a universal setup where you cut your own flapper and it fits in place. This stuff is pretty easy to install as far as following directions. Even the stand with the valve is a relatively simple thing to install. If you don't feel comfortable, it's something that a licensed plumber would be more than happy to help you with and make sure it's installed correctly, because you don't want this issue happening, months or a year from now. So water may continually run down the overflow. If the tube valve has failed, like I said, that is the big thing we're looking for on a continuous leak, that the water is continuously running. On a dual flush, it's a little bit similar. When we get to how you inspect the valve on a dual flush, you can't really see much in a dual system. So this is where you have 2 little buttons to either select the different volumes of water that you want to use. But as far as what we're looking for here, we have this, you're usually going to have this little 1/4 inch tube that's inside the back of the tank. This is the thing that you can, if you're really unsure if there's water, you can physically inspect this on the last one too. You can physically inspect these 1/4 inch tubes because that's where the water supply is being introduced to the toilet. So you can actually look at those tubes on either style of toilet to say, hey, this thing is running or it's not running. Now, inspecting the valve or the flapper, this is a lot more easily seen in just a normal toilet. You can't really see the flapper as well in the double or the dual flush. But the cool thing about inspecting to see if your flapper is good isn't really about a visual inspection of looking directly at the device. It's about doing a dye test. Now, a dye test is simply taking some sort of dye, putting it in the back of the tank there, and waiting to see if that colored water transfers over into the bowl. So if you put, in this example, green dye, or you can see in the picture, these little blue dye tabs, the water in the reservoir back there is going to turn green, blue, whatever you put in there. If that green or blue tint gets over to the bowl without you flushing it, that means it's getting through the flapper. And so this is something where these are pretty common, these little leak detector dye tabs, but this is something where you can put, you can put, anything that's just a normal liquid back there. So people put coffee and all of the kinds of liquids back there. But this is something where you can test out your flappers to see if they're leaking. And again, this is not going to be a continuous leak. This is going to be something that is intermittent. So what happens when the flapper is leaking is it slowly drains out this reservoir. And then when the water, hits a certain level, the toilet kicks on, fills it back up, and then stops. So you will most likely not see this on a meter unless you wait there long enough, or you do a longer test, or you look at MyWater Tracker and see, hey, it's happening through the night, that sort of thing. And it's going to be difficult to see the immediate response, like when we shut things off and we say, hey, the meter stopped spinning. You're not going to be able to catch it. So you're going to have to do something like this dye test to determine, hey, I have an intermittent leak on this toilet. For sinks, we want to check water pressure at every sink. Low pressure in a certain area may indicate that the source of the leak is nearby. So if you have, decent pressure throughout the house, but then you have maybe one corner of the house where kitchen, bathroom, whatever it is, and the pressure seems to dip off, that's a good indication that the leak source is nearby. Another common thing for indoors is we have these water filters, either on the outdoor near the point of connection that we showed earlier, sometimes in the garage. And what will happen is these devices will have kind of like an auto scrubbing regeneration type system in it. And it will use water to clean its filters and its screens to get all the media and stuff out of there. And it will do that on a, maybe nightly basis. It'll go off every midnight. Sometimes those devices can fail and they can just continuously keep rinsing and putting water out into the sewer. So one thing we want to do, and part of the isolation process, if you do have a water filter, is you want to bypass the water filter. So if you can imagine where my mouse is right here, this is a water filter. You have the water coming into the water filter and then going out down to the house. So the way we bypass this is we turn off the inlet to the filters, we turn off the inlet, we turn off the outlet, and then we open this bypass. So rather than water going into the filters and going into the house, it bypasses it through this bridge right here and goes through without any of that. Now, if you can turn off, or I should say, if you could bypass those filters and again, go back to the meter and say, hey, it stopped spinning, you've got an issue with the filters and you want to call the technician to come out and repair it. Another style of bypass valve is, this is actually one's probably more common. On the back of the tanks, you will see a valve that looks like this. It's just they turn it clockwise until it's secure and tight. And this is going to do all in one movement. It's going to shut off the inlet and the outlet and bypass the inlet straight into the house. So this is pretty common. And again, once you have this valve shut off, check the meter and see, hey, is it still spinning or is it not spinning? And then you can move on to the next step or determine if that's it. Any leak you identify may be difficult to repair without technical experience. So for the indoors, I would say toilet stuff is probably the easiest as far as difficulty, just because of the repair kits that they make and how often toilets are breaking and how many homeowners have probably already repaired toilets. Maybe even listening in the audience right now, you've repaired a toilet. It's a pretty common thing. But if you don't feel comfortable with something, by all means, get a licensed plumber out there to help you. If it's something where you've determined it's indoors, you've looked at all your devices, you've looked for wet spots, you still can't find anything, there's a good chance that it's somewhere that's going to be really difficult to find. So that's when you get someone with the experience of leak detection to find it as soon as possible and to repair it. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with leaks by the house, yes, we want to save water and there is the cost to water, but the supplemental damage to the house is going to be what we're putting at risk here. So as soon as possible, they do have 24-hour, response teams. And so that's what you want to call. You want to call someone out and say, hey, my meter's moving, I've isolated to the indoors, and you can give them like the background, right? So you can cut down some of their work because you've already done some of the process. You've already done the isolation. You say, hey, I shut everything off, it's inside, and you can give them the backstory. With that, that's basically the process. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand it off to Kyle for a little bit about improving water efficiency.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabriel. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Kyle Jeffries, and I work in the Water Use Efficiency Department here at Rancho Water. Before I discuss the water use efficiency section, I just want to encourage everyone, now's the time. If you have any questions for the instructor, please go ahead and enter that in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. And Kimby will be reading those to our instructor in just a few minutes. So any questions you may have, now's the time. I first just want to start off by quickly describing the leak resources Rancho Water has made available for all of our customers. We do provide leak alerts if your meter is reporting suspicious activity, obviously continuous water usage. If you are a commercial or agricultural customer, You can opt in to receiving these alerts by logging into your account. But if you are a residential customer, which I'm assuming the majority of our attendees are today, you don't need to do anything because you're automatically enrolled in receiving alerts. But it is important to note that the delivery of the alerts really depends on the leak volume and size. So for example, if you have a really, really small leak, you'll receive your first alert after 72 hours of continuous water usage. However, if you have a really, really large leak, you would receive your first alert after 24 hours of continuous water usage. Alerts are sent by email, text message, and robocalls. On occasion, we will send out alerts via mail, so keep an eye out for that as well. We cannot stress enough the importance of customers to occasionally log into their account. Completely free, just log into your account and update your contact information. Oftentimes we receive customers who call in with this huge bill and they're upset. They figured out they had a leak and come to find out we were sending alerts to a landline that they didn't have for 20 years. So please just log into your account on occasion, check to make sure we have the correct information, not only for leak alerts, but for other water emergencies. Now, if you end up being one of those unlucky customers who received or will receive a leak alert, we want you to know that we do have resources available for you. All of our alerts that we send out directly to you directs customers to our leak webpage. And you can see what that looks like here. When you go to this webpage, you're able to locate and find resources on locating and repair leaks. So like today, Gabriel discussed locating, trying to detect where those leaks are occurring. But we have also YouTube videos on how to repair those leaks once you find them. One of the most important resources I'd say on this page is our frequently asked questions section that provides a lot of insight and direction. So most, if not all, of the questions you may have regarding a leak alert you received will be answered in this frequently asked questions section. So it's a great starting point. If you receive an alert, go there first, read everything, and then you could go ahead and act on how you're going to tackle the leak. So anyways, moving forward, MyWater Tracker, Gabriel touched on that. Really important. This is a great free resource that we offer all of our customers. So if you receive a leak alert, log in to your account, verify the continuous usage that Gabriel discussed. And then once you feel like you repaired that leak, it's really important to log back in and confirm that continuous usage has ended. Because oftentimes customers has more than one leak on their property and they fixed one toilet, but come to find out they also had a pool leak or so on and so forth. We do also offer free leak kits for our customers. Kits include a variety of water efficient appliances, including toilet flappers, a faucet aerator, a hose nozzle. Those are just some examples. And what's really important and beneficial is we provide a practical plumbing handbook for free included in that kit that is really detailed in how to repair leaks. These are absolutely free for all of our customers, but they're limited to one kit per account. So you could go to this page here, ranchowater.com/leaks, and request one today for free. And then lastly, we have had many customers reach out asking if we recommend a leak detection contractor. As a district, we do not recommend specific contractors or companies. However, we do provide a list of local contractors in our area. What we pretty much did is just Google search them and compile them into the list for your benefit. We want to stress though, like Gabriel mentioned, when you do hire someone, make sure they're licensed, certified. And oftentimes I even recommend customers, doing like a Google search or review on them or a Yelp review, just to confirm that everything's legitimate. Next slide, please, Gabriel. So echoing what Gabriel mentioned about in the beginning of the workshop about drought, our state's been in a mega drought for the last 2 decades, and UCLA just released a report saying that this has been the driest period it's been in over 1,200 years. So we're in very dire conditions statewide in regards to drought. But the good news is our community has been really resilient and it has really adapted to these challenges. So to help our community cope with water shortages and drought conditions, we offer a variety of tools and resources that are listed here on this page for you. The first being education. Like today, We offer free workshops throughout the year. Some past workshops include, landscape courses on turf removal or how to plant California native plants that are adapted to our Mediterranean environment. And we also had a firescaping class that's recorded on our website for your viewing pleasure, but regarding how to plant not only water efficient, plants around your house, but fire resistant plants, because we have a lot of our customers in the Duluth or La Cresta area as well. So if interested, please visit ranchowater.com/workshops for a list of these upcoming classes, as well as to view past recordings. We also offer technical assistance, and this is great that Gabriel is presenting today, because he's one of the consultants we use to come to your property for free and give you specific advice on what you could do to conserve water for your landscaping and how to use water more efficiently. He'll actually walk you through your controller timer to make sure it's set correctly, search for outdoor leaks, occasionally indoor leaks. But this assistance is completely free, and all you have to do is sign up for that on our website, ranchowater.com/WUE, and that stands for water use efficiency. And then lastly, by far the most popular resource we offer is a variety of indoor and outdoor rebates for our customers. These are available for all of our customers, residential, agricultural, commercial. I'm not going to go into great detail on these. You can see them on our screen here, but the most popular being toilets for the indoor, clothes washers. We also offer outdoor weather-based irrigation controllers that are really great. They're smart controllers that water your landscape based on weather, soil type, so on and so forth. So if interested in that, please go on our page, ranchowater.com/rebates. And yeah, so then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kimmy. Kimmy is going to read off some questions we received.
Okay, well, we'll start actually right here since we have everybody's contact information up here. Gabriel, can you go over one more time? Kyle just kind of mentioned it, but do you come to Temecula and Marietta to residential homes to look for leaks? And if so, how do they contact you?
Yeah, so you would actually reach out to Kyle or the Water Conservation Department at Rancho, California, and they would set up a water use efficiency evaluation. So I'm in Temecula and Marietta through Rancho, California Water District.
Perfect. Okay. So a question for you. Is a service line a customer's responsibility to fix if there's a leak? Kind of like at what point of the line is it Rancho's responsibility, and when does it become the customer's responsibility?
Yeah, so none of the service line is going to be the water district's responsibility. Everything after the meter is your asset and your responsibility to maintain and repair.
Okay. So do we have a list, and Kyle, maybe you know this, do we have a list of approved plumbers to assist with repairs once they find the leak?
Yeah, so that's that leak resources webpage I mentioned. Yes, yep, right there. So you would just click on that. And again, we compiled just a list of local contractors. We didn't dive into, how certified they are. You're going to have to do that research, but we did compile a list just to make it easier for you to a starting point. But yes, www.ranchowater.com/.
Okay, great. Question from the audience for Gabriel. My meter is full of very moist dirt and covered with mud, which I have now uncovered. Is this harmful?
Harmful
to the meter? I would think to the meter, yes.
I'm going to let the water district answer that one.
Yeah, we would have to check with our meter department. Obviously, if there's water in your meter box, there shouldn't be water in there, right, Gabriel? I mean, that's obviously that could be a leak or something more serious. So if you do have water, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just to answer the question is it harmful? Sounds like, is it harmful to the meter? I don't know. That's a question for them. But if there's water in a meter box, that's usually a sign of maybe something's broken. A lot of times it can actually just be over irrigation. When you oversaturate your lawn, by watering it 10 minutes every day, that water just has nowhere to go and it migrates into areas of giant pore space, which is meter boxes and valve boxes. So if you see a lot of water and mud in a box, it could be a leak, but it could also just be, checking those irrigation schedules, make sure you're not irrigating too long.
Okay. And then how does somebody know that it's not the meter that's malfunctioning, that it's actually a leak and it's not something that's wrong with their meter?
Again, that would be So if there is continuous water usage, I would say the majority, if not majority, let's just say the majority of the time, it is definitely on the customer side because the water is actually going through the meter and that's why it's reporting it. However, if you have any questions, reach out to me and we'll discuss that. But again, by signing up for a landscape irrigation audit, someone can come out there like Gabriel and just verify by most of the time looking at it and pinpointing where that's coming from.
Perfect. Okay, so that meter box area, if there's something that you think is going on that's kind of funky with it, just call us and then we can send somebody out to take a look and decide, if there's a leak and whose responsibility it is.
Yeah, but I would first start off with signing up for a landscape audit because oftentimes you don't need to call us because you're going to find it before reaching out to the ditch.
Perfect. Okay. And then a question which may pertain to some people, if you have land or another income property that's not within the Rancho district and you're on a well, is there actually a meter that's probably not a meter that's attached to the well, or how would you find a leak in that kind of situation? Quick answer, since most of these, since it may not pertain to everybody here.
I'm not sure. Gabriel, are you familiar with wells and metering devices on wells?
Yeah, wells won't necessarily have a meter, but that's one thing that if you are an owner that has a meter, I would recommend putting in. And again, this wouldn't be a water district meter. This would be what we call a sub meter. It would be, again, your asset. And it's definitely from a management perspective, something that I recommend putting on. Some people that have wells will have their own meters. Some will not. But again, if you don't have your own meter, it's kind of difficult to determine if you have a leak or not. If you don't have a leak, one thing you can do is shut off your point of connection, and they actually make like stethoscopes and stuff that you can listen to your main line. But you can jot down my information. I'd be happy to talk to you offline, probably because most people don't have wells, but we can chat about it.
You have to become your own water doctor at that point with your stethoscope.
Yeah, basically.
All right. And then somebody asked if we can get a copy of this video. Yes, you can, definitely. We are having a recording this, and early next week we will have it on our website and on our YouTube channel as well, so you can rewatch everything and go through it slowly and watch Gabriel's advice for each of these sections. That is all the questions I'm seeing. We'll give it one more second if anybody has any other further questions. In the meantime, I just want to thank everybody for being here on this Saturday morning, and we hope you find the leaks you're looking for. If not, give us a call, and Gabriel will be happy to come out and help you hunt down those leaks. It is Fix a Leak Week, so this is a perfect time to be out finding your leaks on this beautiful weekend. Thank you so much for being here, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.